So good morning, everyone. My name is Nicola McNevin. I'm Education Lead for JA Nova Scotia. We're very excited to have you with us this morning for the STEM World of Choices event. Thank you, teachers and students, for joining us. Today is the second in a series of World of Choices virtual events. We are so pleased to welcome today's career mentors and Career Expo participants who have generously donated their time to be here today. What will this morning look like? Well, essentially, there are two parts to today's event. First, we will introduce you to 4 featured career mentors. Each mentor will share their education and career stories with you. Then there will be a career expo. You will visit the Career Expo either as a class or individually. It's up to your teacher. And when visiting the Career Expo booth, we will allow you to further explore some of the education programs offered and career options available within Nova Scotia. Before the Career Expo, we will go through the participant profiles together so that you can choose the booth that is most interesting and exciting for you. And we hope that you enjoy. I'd like to thank RBC for funding World of Choices. And in a moment, I will introduce our co-host, Anna Nagulek, who is with the RBC Olympian Program. I'm just going to pull up Anna's profile here. One second. All right, I hope you can see that. Thank you, Anna, for joining us. So Anna is the 2019 Pan American Games gold medalist, Canada Games gold medalist, a junior and 23 World Championships finalist, previously an RBC future Olympian. Having earned funding through RBC Training Ground, Anna has been a kayaker for the past 12 years. She is a recent graduate of a BSc in kinesiology, which she completed while training full-time and mentoring other students. Anna is also passionate about giving back to her community and paddling club, Mascot Aquatic Club, encouraging kids and teens to enjoy lifelong participation in sports by volunteering with Fast and Female and the Paddle All program. At the 2019 Pan American Games in the K4 500 event, Anna's team won the first gold for Canada, fueling her Olympic dream even more. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Nicola. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me that she introduced. I'm currently a kayaker training on the national team right now, and I work as an RBC Olympian with RBC. A little bit of what I do besides the paddling stuff. My job at RBC, I work in a virtual office setting with a flexible work schedule so I can gain valuable career development skills while I'm training and competing. So I work in marketing, communications, and corporate citizenship teams and support on different projects. I'm also involved in speaking engagements, including personal and virtual appearances at RBC-sponsored events. And additionally, I'm responsible for sharing some stories online about my meaningful experiences to youth, RBC employees, clients, and others. I'm very excited to be hosting this event.
Thank you, Anna. That's super. And now we would like to introduce you to our first featured career mentor. Our first mentor is Konstantinos Manos, founder and lead game designer at Vesuvius Media. Welcome, Konstantinos.
Good morning to all. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. We're so excited to have you. Thank you for joining. I'm going to start by just asking, can you tell us just a general overview of what it is that you do as lead game designer of Vesuvius Media?
Lead game designer. That sounds so cool.
It is pretty cool.
So, truth be told, right now, because the company is growing, I'm more of a CEO than a game designer. My dream was to be a game designer, but when you grow, you have to do more stuff than just game designing. As a lead game designer right now, my role mainly has fall to what we call development. Designing a game and developing a game is two different things, depending on the industry. Board games have a different interpretation. Mobile and online games have a different interpretation. Right now, I'm pretty much going through the proposals of games, and I'm making sure which one is better match for our company. I will tweak it, but then I will have other people work, design it, perfect it, and then I will probably at the end just polish and balance the math, because I'm the math guy in the company.
Very cool, and that's why we're here. It's all about maths today for
Yes,
STEM.
it is.
So I'm gonna ask a question, then I'm gonna pass it on to Anna to ask you some questions. But to start, why did you choose this career, or how did you end up where you are?
Oh, that was my dream from as long as I can remember. Like back when we didn't even have computers, I always wanted to create games. And when you were looking around what creating a game means back then, it was extremely difficult to even get something produced or connections or get to the market. But growing up, the computers were going up, and internet came into our life, and then it became more apparent to me, oh, this is a medium I can actually tap. So I switched to something online, and then head on from then on. It was
Amazing.
yeah, it made it easier, because if we didn't have internet and computers into our lives, then you can only go through the regular market, mass market, which is very difficult, needs connections, needs productions, needs a lot of money. Whereas internet make it so that you can be a one-man show. You can create something small, start, expose it, be happy that you created something, and then build up from there.
Very cool. Anna, do you have a question for Konstantinos?
Yeah, I was wondering if did you always think that this is what you would do? Or did you have, yes, always?
Yeah, unfortunately, I hear most people's stories like they were looking, they were trying, experimenting different. Sorry, I'm not that guy. I knew I wanted to do games from the moment I started, and the difference with my career path is that I didn't get to do it at the beginning of it. I had to build up the skills to reach a level when I could do it at least on my own to begin with, without having a team behind to support you. So what happened is that although I wanted to do games, I went into computer science. I have a PhD in computer science in educational software. By the way, it is a game what I actually created at the end during my PhD. But I started working in the private sector as a software developer, and that's where I met with technology. That's how I kept following it. Internet at the beginning, Google afterwards, YouTube, or streaming videos. The more the technology was going up, the more things I could actually create on my own. I reached the point when I managed to produce my first game, and from then on, things started happening. But I needed to acquire all these skills, and it took me about 10 years to reach that level. Because I actually have the background to create a game from zero to the end of it. Apart
Amazing.
from graphics, because I'm not an artist and I hire people to give me artists, everything else technically I can do it on my own.
Very cool. So just to give the students an idea, you say you have a PhD in computer science, I believe you said.
Yeah.
So the students probably don't even know what that means. So can you just talk a little bit about your education?
Yes. Academic background.
Story.
So
Yeah.
while we're going through life, there are certain stages milestones you have to hit. Starting from elementary, going to junior high school. This is what most people know as basic education. Then after that, we start going higher. Higher comes with many different levels of education. You start with a bachelor's degree someplace, then you can go a little bit higher with masters, and then you can go all the way up to a PhD. So PhD means it comes with a cool title that you can call yourself doctor. But the difference is that up before PhD, everything else is educating yourself, reading material, giving exams, even during the masters. And that's why you can have masters in various different sectors, because you might want to collect experience from everywhere after you finish your university degree. In PhD, you actually have to do some kind of research, and you have to contribute to the academic community, and you have to prove, and you have to be vetted from people in that community that you're contributing in. So you have to have some kind of original research. You have to publish to journals that are scientific and approved by the community. You have to present, and you have to be approved by a panel of other already teachers from universities. So this PhD process usually takes about 3 years. The usual course is that you finish your high school, you go to your bachelor's, you get your bachelor's degree, you take about 2 years to do your master's. During your master's, you are doing two things. First of all, you're becoming better with your own skills. Second, you are learning how to create and present your scientific materials to the community, whatever that. For me, it was computer science, so I had to do something and have to learn how to write journal papers and how you present and how you verify and how you do the legwork that needs to be done to get there. And then you start a PhD by selecting some mentor, some teacher from a university that will be your sponsor, basically. And it takes anywhere from 3 years up to many years. It depends on your progress. So as far as my career path is concerned, I finished the bachelor's degree. My final exercise, whatever, it's different with each university, but the thing that I implemented during my bachelor's degree and to finish my bachelor's degree was actually published in a journal. So I didn't have to go through a master's. I skipped directly to a PhD. And my PhD took about 1.5 years, not 3 years, to finish all the journal publications. And that's a funny story because I did it in Greece, and back then I had to present, to get the PhD, I had to present it in Greek. And all of my work, because it's international, it's in English, and I didn't want to translate it. So I finished in 1.5 years and then stopped. And waited 1.5 years more. And at that point, my sponsor came and said, "Look, the law changed. You can submit in English." Yay!
Fantastic.
Then went back and actually submitted. Yes, because you do all the work in English, whatever language you are. All the international conferences I had to present in the US, in Europe, in Turkey, in China, it is in Russia. The community, the scientific community is not confined. No matter where your university is, the PhD has to expose you to the international community, and the international community needs to approve you. So that means English, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's great. Thank you so much. I'm sure that gives a much clearer idea to the students, the amount of work that you've put into getting to where you are. And Anna, I'm going to let you ask a question next.
Yeah, so that's really cool, all this cool, but I was wondering, what other skills besides like your formal education did you find would be helpful in this career?
So there are two pillars to get where you want to go. One is education. The other one is actual practice on the job. I was extremely lucky to have both at the same time, which means that because I was honing my skills, I loved computer science and I was reading computers way before I went to university. At the end of the first year of university, I was picked up and recruited from the biggest software house in Greece, Singular Logic back then, and they had me to work in the research and development department, the R&D, which means that our job was to scout for new technology and bring them and prepare them for the rest of the developers to actually use them. This means that I was exposed to how actual work is being done in my industry, because academics and actual work is two completely different things, especially in computers. I'm going to talk about my science because other things, but I'm assuming even for doctors, it's a different thing to read a book, different thing to actually open up a person. So, and the reason I was so fast with my PhD and everything else is because I was at the same time working. So as far as the academic part of my life was concerned, I had a set of skills coming from my real work experience that improved my academic performance by tenfold. At the same time, in my work experience, because I was going into PhD and I was exposed to all these new technologies internationally, I had skills that improved my work experience tenfold. So this whole thing helped me going up really fast. And the reason PhD was done that fast is because I could, based on the skills that I got from my working experience, I could actually implement the things that in my PhD I was theorizing about. So I came up with some ideas. I was proposing some new models, but I had the skills to actually make them. Whereas usually what happens with PhDs is that you go through a lengthy process of creating the formulas, and then you have to find either some place to apply them, some industry, somebody to invest in it. So that's why it usually takes longer. But I had the skills to do it myself because I acquired them by working at the same time. Difficult because I was pretty much doing the same. I was working 8 hours per day while at the same time studying full time for both bachelor and PhD. But I loved it, so it didn't feel like work.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm also wondering, can you talk about what you do in a typical work day or work week in your job?
Typical. There's no typical in your own business. That's the cool thing now. My work is not 9 to 5. When you run your own business, there are no vacation, there are no days off, there are no nothing. We work 24/7, and it's this 24/7. And because we are working with partners all around the world, it's not even my own time zone. Like we are producing games in China. That means 10 hours difference at the very least. We have partners in Russia, in Asia, in Europe, in Australia. So things go at the same time everywhere. Currently, my job mainly, we work in two different areas. One, publishing the games that we create ourselves. So as I said at the beginning, I'm screening through the games. When I find one that I like, then I work with the designer to bring it to the Vesuvius media level. I work with artists to create the art, and I'm the person that makes sure that everything is glued together to the final product. And then when we have that final product, we go through Kickstarter and we do crowdfunding to raise the funds to produce it, because producing an actual physical product is extremely expensive. So that's my typical day consists of reading through stuff that designers send, because you get constantly proposals. So I have this cool game, I have this cool idea. And you have to find the one that you like. Then at the same time, when we're working, because we're constantly working on at least one project, I'm marshalling the rest of the team to figure out when we're going to reach the level when we can present it to the community. And then if we're running a Kickstarter campaign, then no, we don't sleep. For the 20 days of the Kickstarter campaign, we're constantly online, Facebook, comments on Kickstarter, Twitter, everything, because people just have questions and we have to be there. We have a very small time frame of 20 days, and that's it pretty much.
Very cool. I'm sure there are a ton of students on the call right now just thinking, this is like my dream job.
Oh, yeah.
So what advice would you give to students now talking about the gaming industry or game design into how to even begin to get into that?
I'm going to tell you the mistake I did. The mistake I did is I didn't believe enough on what I can do, and I waited way too long. So I could have been in the same place I'm today about 6 or 7 years earlier. So as soon as I had the idea, and we started the company, me and my best friend back then. So it was 2010 that we started working on a game. It took us about 2 weeks to reach a point where it looks nice. It wasn't finished. We were at 80%. We finished the game 5 or 6 years later.
Wow.
Because real life, because we didn't believe that it was as good, or we didn't think that we can make it there, or whatever. It's just like 6 years later, I met my wife, and my wife started kicking me in the butt. Man, you have something good. You have something good. Just psychological support. That was more than enough. We finished it in a month later, and that was the beginning of the company. And at that point, we said, "Holy, why didn't we do that 6 years ago? The technology, the knowledge, the skills, we had exactly the same things, and we could have been ahead of the curve." So as long as you're dealing with something that has to do with technology, like computer science specifically, things change radically and constantly. If you have an idea, do not wait. Do not, just go in. Worst case scenario, you're going to fail, but it's better to try and fail than live with a what if. What if? And that was the lesson that I got. And from then on, I don't do it. Just keep on going straight, trying one thing after the other. That's a lot of work. You have to be ready to pull up your sleeves and long nights, long days, long weeks. But if it is something that you love, I don't think that you can feel it doesn't feel like work at the end of the day.
Sure,
But
sure.
it's not gonna get there. Like it took me 10 years to reach that point.
No, that's a great point. Thank you so much. And I think that will probably resonate with the students and the teachers. We're just going to take some questions from the students, and it usually takes a moment for them to get those through their teacher into the chat. In the meantime, Anna, do you have another question for Konstantinos?
Yeah, so what can be the most challenging part of your job?
Decisions. You at the end of the day, given my position, I'm responsible of how things are going to end up. So you always feel the weight of, because a decision is going to come up with a year commitment, with money, with work, and then at the end, if this doesn't pan out, things can go really bad, or it can take you back. That's the idea. We have reached a point where we can mitigate that because we're investing in more than one project, or we have various connections. But it's extremely challenging, and because we now have physical products, and with COVID messing everything up, from supply chains, from productions, from power in China, from distributors not wanting to invest because they don't think that the markets are open. So it's been an interesting couple of years. The past 2 years, it has been like a wholly new challenge every day. Like you open up your email and what we are gonna have to deal with today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm going to have Anna just, we have a question in the chat, and I'll have Anna monitor that.
So I have, what school did you go to, and what's the salary range for someone in your field?
Yes.
So I finished high school in Greece. I finished then the University of Piraeus in Greece, and where I did also my bachelor's and my PhD. The salary range for someone in your field with my skills, or when you finish your university, these are two different things.
How about both? How about starting and then at the level that you are, just a broad range?
Okay. When you start, I expect in Canadian dollars to be around 4,000 to 5,000 per month. I think I do math, sorry, because I'm from Greece. I don't do the annual thing that you did. So extrapolated by 12, we're talking about 60,000 per year to begin with. The problem with the computer industry, specifically with computer science, is that your degree doesn't mean anything. That's the good and the bad of the industry. I know as a CEO that when you come into the interview and you start talking about your degrees, you probably lost me. I'm going to be done in the interview in the first 2 minutes. You're not the person that I'm looking for. If you start the conversation and you think that you know because you have degrees, you lost me. You are not the person I'm looking for. You have to put the legwork. You have to study on your own. You have to use university or any other thing as the excuse to research and hone your skills. At the end of the day, I can find a geek that knows actually coding or knows actual game design because he spent all his afternoons doing that, even if his bachelor's degree is safe. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely hire him over you. That's the problem. So the problem that this poses is the fact that your salary depends on what you can actually do and whether I can rely on giving you a project and not having to deal with you. Because if I have to put 3 people on top of you to check you, then your salary goes down because the other people are getting paid to help you do your work.
Okay. No, of course.
Now, the skills when you reach my level, because I am self-sustained and I'm a person that you can give me $1 million project and I can actually sit down, say goodbye, come back in 3 months and have it ready, and you don't have to project manage me. That's a completely different skill. I can pretty much ask whatever I want in the industry to develop things. And that's actually why I end up doing my own thing and not working for others. Because I have worked for 100K for 3 months, and the people make 10 million on top of my work. And this is something that it feels strange, but that's how it is. You do it until you can do something for yourself. And that's what I did. So
Super.
now I have my company, and I work for me, my own times, my own hours, and that's it.
Well, you're the second person of your team that I've met so far, and I'm loving Vesuvius Media, and I can't wait to work with you all again. And you're such great mentors for our students. Thank you so much, Konstantinos, for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. That was a quick break, just a little stretch. Time to review or reflect on our first presenter. We're very happy to have our second presenter with us today. Leah Mcconney is an oceans biologist with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So great to see you. And I have to thank our mentors who are doing double duty today. So we have two events running simultaneously, and so some of our presenters are hopping from one call to another. So thank you, Leah, for running back and forth between our calls and meeting all of these students. That's great.
Happy to be here and to meet as many as I can.
Super. So I'm just going to start off. Can you tell the students a little bit about what an oceans biologist does? And I'm going to give you co-host rights because I think you want to share some slides to talk about what you do.
Yes. So while those co-host rates come through, as an oceans biologist, I work in a program called Marine Planning and Conservation. So I actually work on making and managing marine protected areas, which are kind of like a provincial or national park in the sea. So it's an area kind of set aside for conservation. So like you think of your favorite national park or your favorite provincial park, you don't build cities in them. You don't have like big infrastructure, but maybe you're allowed to go hiking. You're allowed to maybe go fishing in them. So there's certain activities that are allowed to kind of keep them natural and keep the habitats healthy and the species healthy. But there's certain activities that are kind of kept outside of those. Not to say that we don't need those activities. We need cities, but maybe we don't need cities everywhere.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I have a question just came to my mind because when you're talking about that, do you mostly work in an office environment or do you actually work in the field outside?
I mostly work in the office. So this is my home office right now. So because of the pandemic, I was actually able to work from home full time. I've been quite fortunate. I never had to stop working. I was able to work continuously throughout the whole pandemic. But yes, I would say 95% of my time is spent in an office. So you've been warned. I do get to go out in the field once in a while with some of our researchers. So this summer I went on a cruise that was going to the Eastern Shore where they were doing dive surveys. Last fall, I went on a surveillance flight. So on one of the small planes with fishery officers who were checking out our MPAs to make sure everyone was kind of following the rules. But yes, most of my days are spent in an office, in calls, usually in-person meetings, lots of meeting with people and hearing different perspectives and points of view. But yes, primarily in the office.
Thank you. I'm going to give the next question over to Anna.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, why did you choose this career?
So I am one of those funny kids who's always been passionate for the same career. I'm actually from Brampton, Ontario, so landlocked, far from the ocean. But my parents are both from the Caribbean. So growing up as a child, we would often go on vacations to Barbados, which is where my mom is from. And our favorite thing to do would be to explore the reef flats, picking up brittle stars and hermit crabs and learning about sea urchins. That was what I just loved to do. And a family member, when I think I was around 8, around grade 3, said, you should be a marine biologist. This is what you like. That's what they do. And I was like, perfect. And it just kind of stuck. So from that point on, pretty much all kind of my decisions were kind of based on trying to be a marine biologist.
And so that's a great lead in for that. How do you become a marine biologist? So what's your education background?
So I have a Bachelor of Science in Marine and Freshwater Biology from the University of Guelph in Ontario. And then I did a Master's of Marine Management at Dalhousie University. So that's how I first came out to the East Coast. And then I've just stuck around, haven't gone back. So in my group, I'd say pretty much everyone in my group has a master's degree. A couple actually have PhDs. You don't have to have a master's to do like any job at DFO, at Fisheries and Oceans Canada, but my group, we primarily do have masters.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, so is there any additional training or experience that has really been beneficial to your success in this role?
So for me, what kind of really flipped things for me is I actually spent a semester abroad in my undergrad. I was fortunate enough to go to the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. And on that exchange, that was where I kind of flipped from wanting to be like a pure natural scientist. So in the field, in the lab, testing hypotheses, writing journal articles, and kind of got the idea that maybe I wanted to do natural resource management. So more taking the science and figuring out how we can apply it to help people longer term, and like how do we use our resources sustainably to make sure that they're here for this generation, but also future generations. So I got to meet amazing communities during that exchange and learn about how traditional conservation happens in indigenous Fijian communities. And yeah, that kind of spurred the idea that maybe I wanted to go a slightly different path.
That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I have a question for you, Leah. So when we're talking about Nova Scotia and preservation areas, how does that even get on the table? So how does it start that something should be designated as a preservation area? Like, what is the process and where do you come into that?
So the process can vary. So in our minds, we've been making marine protected areas for a really long time, but they haven't been around in Canada for quite that long. The first one out here was the Gully, and that was only made in 2004. So we haven't been doing them for that long. And so the process has kind of been different for all of them so far. So there's Musquash Estuary in New Brunswick in the Bay of Fundy, and that was really pushed for by the local community. They were concerned about this estuary. They were concerned about development coming in, and they really pushed for having this area conserved. For the Gully, it was a little different. It was partially pushed for by Angos and also academics who realized that there was this really special population of whales, the northern bottlenose whales, that spent a lot of time in the Gully, and they kind of pushed for it. And then nowadays, we kind of use what we call the conservation network. So there's a process to try to identify areas for future conservation based on a whole bunch of factors, trying to make sure we don't impact fisheries and industry too much, trying to make sure we protect certain amounts of habitat for different species, trying to make sure that we protect species that are at risk. So that was a whole process, and that's going to kind of guide where we look into the future. So I can be involved, like a community can come and say that we're interested in exploring something in our area, or we could start and be like, this is your community, like the waters adjacent to your community are very special. We're interested in working with you guys on setting up a conservation area here.
So interesting.
Very cool.
And I know we ran ahead and started asking you questions because we are so interested in what you do. But I know you do have some slides if you want to share some of those.
I feel like I've covered quite a few of the things, but they're just mostly pretty pictures.
Yeah, no, we'd love to see those.
So it's just, I think, trying to share.
Yep, you can see that now.
Go. Okay. So yeah, so as I said, I'm from Ontario, went to University of Guelph, and this is kind of how my passion started. And then, as I mentioned, that semester abroad in Fiji really kind of was that pivotal point in my kind of career journey from switching from natural sciences to more resource management. As I mentioned, I did that Master's of Marine Management program at Dalhousie. For me, so I was the last year that it was a 12-month program. It is now a 16-month program. But a big draw for me was that this program required that you do an internship. And I thought I knew coming into that master's program, I didn't have really work experience in my field. And to me, that was a great way to get some work experience on my resume so that when I graduated, it would be that much easier to try to find a job.
That's great.
And then, I guess I have had a couple other jobs before I got to DFO. So when I first graduated, DFO wasn't hiring at that point. So I actually spent some time working as a marine mammal observer. So this is kind of more what people think of when they think of marine biologist. I would live on a boat for 5 weeks at a time, and I would look for whales and dolphins. So it was such a cool experience. On my very first trip, I saw 2 orcas offshore Nova Scotia, which is not super common. Saw tons of pilot whales. I spent time down in the Gulf of Mexico where I saw sperm whales and all the dolphins I could ever want to see. This was for me where I learned a little bit about work-life balance. Because you spend 5 weeks on the boat and then 5 weeks on land, during those 5 weeks on the boat, you do miss things. So you might miss birthdays or holidays. When you're on the boat, you're on the boat. There's no just hopping off just for special occasions. You're working every day during the week. So I was working weekends for those 5 weeks. I was working every single day. So for me, long term, it didn't work. Also, this was contract work. So you didn't have kind of the consistency and that kind of guarantee that you would have more work going forward. So just something to keep in mind is that work-life balance and that consistency in work, I didn't find was there for me in this position.
Yeah, that's an important point for sure.
And then just one more job I had in between. I worked as a biologist for a consulting firm, which I also really enjoyed. It was, again, a great way to spend a lot of time in the field. The one down in the bottom corner, I was taking a soil sample. In the middle, I'm holding a snake where I was working on, they were doing like a development project, and they needed monitors to make sure that they weren't harming any snakes or amphibians in the area. So I got to go around looking for snakes and amphibians every day. And again, this was a really great work experience. I loved the company and the people I was working with. You can tell by the big smiles there. I just knew my passion lied with the ocean, and I wasn't doing very much ocean work in this role. And yeah, and then this was my attempt to be honest about just how I spend most of my time in the office in the picture on the far right.
Right.
But once in a while, they let me out.
Your experiences are amazing. And like you said, going to Fiji and doing that internship and just to give the students an idea of all of those opportunities that can come up that can dramatically change or shape your future. So thank you for sharing those. Anna, what questions do you have?
I was just wondering, since Nova Scotia is pretty like water adjacent, like you said, if there's much demand for people in your career field in Nova Scotia.
Yes, there is, and I think it will continue to grow. So the Canadian government has made international commitments to protect and conserve 25% of our coastal and marine waters by 2025, and then 30% by 2030. And we are currently at like 13-14%. So there's quite a lot of work to be done. And then even when we get to 2030 and we've kind of achieved that goal, we're going to need people to manage these sites. So we're going to need people to continue to have oversight and make sure that they're achieving their goals, that we're doing all that we can to make sure that they're being protected the way that they should.
For sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Leah, we're going to take some questions from the students, and it may take a moment for those questions to get through the teacher to you. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think would be important for the students to know?
I guess just one recommendation, I skipped this one. I strongly encourage people to try to find programs that, even if they're volunteering, that kind of are adjacent to what you're passionate about. So I was already working at DFO, but I took part in a program called Ocean Bridge, and I was a youth ambassador from 2019 to 2020. And this was a great program to meet other youth that were passionate about the ocean and marine conservation. I got mentorship, I got to develop programs, I got to travel. So there's more and more programs like that. So I encourage students to kind of seek those out.
Fantastic. Anna, do you want to manage that chat?
Yeah, so we do have a question in the chat from Rebecca. So it's how much do people in your field make, and is there a difference for field work or office work?
So in my group, when I started, so 4 years ago, my starting salary was around $60,000 a year, and that had paid vacation, sick days, health benefits, so on and so forth. So it does kind of depend. The salary does vary. So I don't know what research scientists start at, but they would be on a different pay scale, and technicians. So if you're just wanting to do field work, maybe you don't have a master's or a PhD, but you want to be in the field all the time, they would be on a different pay scale as well. So it does vary depending on what you do.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks, Rebecca, for the question. We have another question here from Catherine, and it is, what type of hours do you work?
So I work a very standard work week. I chose an 8 to 4 p.m. schedule, Monday to Friday. Pre-pandemic, sometimes I would be working in the evenings. So if we had like a community open house, or sometimes we would meet with different stakeholders and partners in the evening because it worked better for their schedules. But for the most part, that is one of the benefits to this job, is very consistent work-life balance. I have a pretty consistent work schedule.
Awesome.
I do have a question while we wait to see if there's any more questions from teachers and students. It's very clear that you're very passionate and you love what you do. You talked about all the positive things and the fun things, and it's very inspiring. What is the most challenging thing about what you do?
Honestly, it's kind of the root of what I do, is that people have very strong feelings, especially here in Nova Scotia, about protected areas in the oceans. Some people are very for them, and there's some people who are very against them. Some for very concrete reasons, some because they're afraid it's going to impact their livelihoods, some because they've had bad experiences with government in the past and they don't trust the government. So it's a lot of trying to overcome that, building trust, and sometimes trying to dig beyond what they say at the surface. So maybe they say at the surface that they're against conservation, but maybe they just don't understand what the marine protected area can or cannot do. Maybe they think that it's going to have really negative impacts on them when it might not, depending on how we design it. So
that's a great point. And so how do you manage that, or what do you do?
A lot of listening, a lot of talking, a lot of trying to ask probing questions. It's really about, I had a teacher who said, like, resource management is, you're not managing the resource, you're managing the people. So it's a lot about building those relationships and trying to get to know people so they trust you enough to actually tell you their true concerns.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. Thank you. Anna, did you have anything before we let Leah go?
Yeah, so I know you talked a little bit how your work is a lot in the office, especially during the pandemic, from home. But I'm just wondering what you do in a typical work day or work week working from home.
So one thing I love about this job is that it is so varied. So like this morning, I'm talking to you guys. When I hang up from you, I'm going to go work on a software to try to figure out how to collect feedback from advisory committee members in a creative way in this virtual environment. After that, I have a meeting about a risk assessment on submarine cables and how they might impact important habitats and species in a potential marine protected area. So that's what I love, is the variety and the ability to hop from topic to topic, because it means I don't get bored.
Awesome.
That's great, Leah. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. You've been a great career mentor. And if we receive any questions from teachers and students in the future, if you would consider answering those, we would certainly appreciate that.
Of course, happy to. And thanks so much for having me here today.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Bye now.
Okay, yeah. Whenever we're ready. Yeah.
So this is Dennis. He's the Director of Building Infrastructure and Asset Management at the Nova Scotia Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Really nice to have you here, Dennis.
Thanks. Well, welcome everybody. I wish I could see all of you, and I actually wish we could do this in person. It's always much more fun, and I'm much more energetic when I'm in person. But so what I thought I'd do today is tell you about what I do, what sort of my job is, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself and the wacky life I've led to get to where I am today. And then if there's any questions, you guys can ask me some questions and I'll answer like important questions like how much money can you make? Because that's all my son asked me about. So my son is in grade 11, and I've been talking to all of his friends about this. So what I will do is I'm going to share my screen and I'll do a presentation. And if I'm talking too fast or if you want me to slow down or whatever, let me know and we'll go from there. So just let me know when you guys can see my screen.
It's coming up now. It's good.
Okay, you guys can see it?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So like Anna introduced, my name is Dennis Pelicaro. I'm a professional engineer and I'm also a certified project manager. Fancy words. It impresses my mother quite a bit when I say that. And I work for the Nova Scotia government. I've been working for the Nova Scotia government now for over 15 years. And my current job right now is I help look after all of the public housing in the province. So these are senior apartments and family units right across the province. And we help fix them and make sure that they're repaired. So how did I get to where I am today? So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm just going to be using low tech here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I sort of got here. This was not my career of choice. It sort of found me. So how did I start? Well, I'm originally from Sudbury, Ontario, the home of the Big Nickel and one of the tallest smokestacks in the world. So I grew up looking at this. And when I was a kid, grade 3, grade 4, moved to St. Catharines, Ontario, Niagara Falls, the big cliff with a lot of water rushing over it, home of the Royal Canadian Henley Regatta, and I used to row as a kid. So when I moved to Nova Scotia, I was really happy to see over in Dartmouth and all the rowing clubs here. So it sort of reminded me of home. So that's where I'm from. And so what I did was I graduated from grade 14. So in Ontario at the time, we actually had grade 13. So after grade 12, you could do an extra year to prepare you for university. And I did so great at it that I stayed for grade 14, which really means that I didn't do very well. And I stayed for an extra year in high school. And my teachers were like, oh boy, this guy is not going to amount to much, maybe, you know. But what I did was I actually wound up joining the Navy. And I'll get into why I joined the Navy in a little bit. But I joined the Navy under a training program that they had because they were hiring. They didn't have a lot of people. And what they wound up doing is they sent me to a marine engineering college. So I went to college first, technical trade, and I studied marine engineering technologist, which is like being a mechanical engineer with the added fear of drowning. That's a dad joke. I'm allowed to say these dad jokes. And I went to St. Lawrence College in Cornwall, Ontario. I went to school there for 3 years. And after I graduated, can you guys see my cursor moving around? Right. So what I wound up doing is I served on some old ships. You know, this is one of my first ships here. So actually some of my friends, lots of valves. And actually what was really cool while I was there, I actually became a Navy shipborne diver, which is an extra qualification. So if you fall off the side of the ship, I'm the rescue guy that comes and gets you. So I did that, met a lot of great friends, and I spent the first 9 years of my career in the Navy. And, you know, I was getting a little bit bored and I wanted to do stuff. So I wanted a new challenge. So the Navy at the time, they were offering a chance for, it's called a university training program for non-commissioned members. That's a fancy word for basically saying I was like a sergeant, if that's an easy way to put it. And they said, if you want to become an officer, you can. And what I was able to do is I wound up going to the Royal Military College of Canada in Kingston, Ontario, and I studied engineering. And boy, I wanted a challenge, and boy, did I ever get a challenge. These are some of my buddies that I was there with. We did a lot of cool stuff. And then I graduated as a marine engineering officer. So basically kind of like my boss's job. And I was a marine engineering officer. And I wound up going to the, here's some hero shots of what I looked like when I was in the Navy, young and vibrant and full of energy. And as a diver, I got to do some cool stuff. I was in the Gulf during, right after 9/11. So we got to do some stuff like that. And one of the ships I served on, I'm very proud to serve on, was HMCS St. John's. That was one of my ships. So I did that, and I served for 20 years altogether in my career, but I wanted another challenge. So anyway, this is all the cool stuff I got to do while I was in the Navy. While I was there, I applied and I became an engineer. I got my engineering license, and I also became a project manager, which is another qualification. I got to work on some really cool things while I was there. I was on board ship. That's HMC St. John's. That's one of my older ships. I was up at the Naval Engineering School, so I was sort of like a vice principal, I guess would be the easiest way to put it. And I helped look after some training for machinists and gas turbine technicians and cool like that. And I actually looked after submarines for a little while, so I got to see the new submarines. And this is actually a picture of HMCS Windsor when we were taking her out of the water. And I got to work on that one. So then, I'm just changing here. So it was time for me to get out of the Navy. I wanted to try something a little different. So because I had a lot of engineering management experience, I went to go work for the Nova Scotia government, and my job was to look after hospitals and nursing homes. So I don't know if anyone here recognizes any of these, but this is Northwood. That's out behind the BMO Center in Halifax off of Hammonds Plains Road. So that was actually one of my first projects that someone gave me. I believe it was about $40 million. And I'm like, wow, I get to run a $40 million project. And so we built a pile of nursing homes, working at the IWK, doing a lot of stuff. This is an MRI at the IWK. This is the new children's MRI. We just finished doing that one a little while ago. I was very happy to be part of that project. So I did that for about it was more than 9 years. But I learned a lot of great things. And then very recently, I'm just going to go to my next slide. Very recently, I wanted to take on a new challenge. And so a job in public housing came available. And that's what my job is right now, is I work helping fix public housing across the province. So where I work right now, we have architects and we have engineers. We also have architectural technicians, like college graduates, mechanical engineering technicians, civil engineering technicians, electrical engineering technicians. We have planners, which is a specialty at Dalhousie University. So we have a really nice little team here, but we also get to work with people in finance. My bosses are always accountants. But we also get to work with people like policy people that make up policies for the government, and lawyers. And it's not just working in isolation as an engineer. We work as a team to make sure that we can make life better for some people in Nova Scotia. So here's my career in a nutshell. Being an engineer was not my number one choice. I wanted to be a pilot. But I couldn't be a pilot. I guess I didn't have what it was. Here's a really cool shot of me jumping out of a helicopter as a diver. And that was during 9/11. We were doing some operations, I got to see some cool stuff. So my fallback plan was to join the Navy, make some money, and then get my private pilot's license, which did happen. But I really liked building stuff and fixing stuff. And the Navy really gave me a chance to do that. I realized, wow, I really like doing this other stuff. So they offered me a job, and I kind of took it from there. So my whole career, I've been a worker bee. I've scrubbed toilets. I've washed pots and pans on board ships. I then pulled wrenches, fixed a lot of things. Then I became a supervisor of a few people, and then they trusted me. So I became a junior engineer, and then I became a senior engineer. Then I became an engineering manager, and then a director, and then who knows where my career will go from here, right? So I was very, very lucky. I stumbled upon all of this, and I had some really great mentors that sort of pushed me in a certain direction. So education requirements, what got me here? Well, I did horrible in school. I know your teachers are like, no, don't say that, but I graduated high school with a 65% average. So but I took it from there. But what really was important was that I had really good fundamentals in math, physics, and chemistry. And I have this argument with my son every day. He doesn't like doing English. And I said, English is very important, because really it's all about communicating, being able to write really well, and being able to present and speak. But writing is very, very important as an engineer, because that's all we do is we write big, thick reports all the time. And so, yeah, that's what you need. There's no way around it. If you want to go into the technical trades, math, physics, chemistry, you're going to need to do it, because what you're learning right now are the building blocks of what you will need to go to college. right behind me, I put this up on the board. This is probably some basic stuff that some of you are going to be doing, right? That graphing, you'll be doing in grades 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11. That's probably one of the most important things to learn as an engineer. And the sine law and cosine law, you'd be surprised how you use it every single day. And chemistry, that's actually the formula for acid rain, if you want to understand how acid rain works. And always learning how to do math for finance. So yeah, that's really, really important to know. These are actually some of my friends in the photos. Additional training. Well, there's a lot of courses that you can take, but I would really say the most important training or the skill that you need is a willingness to learn something new every single day. If you have that in your mind that like, hey, I want to learn something, or why does that work and why? And I always ask why. I used to ask a lot of whys. That's, I think, the most important thing is that you're always willing to learn something new. These are some really cool people that I got to work with. Mark Garneau, Canada's first astronaut. I didn't work with him, but he was a marine engineer just like me. So I followed in his footsteps, but I didn't become an astronaut. This fellow right here is Jamil Janjua. He is a test pilot now for the U.S. Air Force, and I went to school with him. He was wicked smart in university. There's my friend Stu Hughes that I did a lot of my training with Prince Charles. And this is a public administration officer in the military. And actually, this lady right here, Monica Quillen, she was one of the first female engineers in the Canadian Navy, and she just is the first female Canadian engineer that achieved the rank of Chief Petty Officer First Class. So that's a first. And we actually worked together. I worked with her husband, and then she actually worked for me for a little while. So there you get to meet some great people. And all of these people, they were always willing to learn something new every single day, and they took their careers to some great heights. We're doing okay for time?
Oh, we're great. Yeah, no, this is
Okay.
great. Thank you, Dennis.
So what's my typical work day? Well, one thing I like about my job is every day it's different. And actually being able to be here with you guys today, this is one of the things that I really enjoy about my job. Every day there's something different. There's always problems to solve. I never say problems. I say things to resolve. That's what I love the most about my job. I've been very fortunate that where I work now, basically my job is an 8 to 4 or a 9 to 5 job. What do I do all day? Meetings, more meetings. And then over lunchtime, I get to watch a little bit of YouTube and shop on Amazon. That's a joke. I get to work through my lunch, but that kind of gives you an idea of what, you know, I have an office job. When I was in the Navy is not an office job. You kind of work all the time. You're gone away, things like that. But right now, for most engineers, yeah, that's kind of like your job. It's like work in an office, get to go out to the field to get to see some cool stuff. This is how we put stuff into a building that's already half built. We make little shelves for it, and then we jam them into the building. So the best part of my job really is working with other people. I really enjoy that. It's not about the project, but it's really about the people doing the project. I always say the project is the nice after effect of what you're doing, but I get to meet and work with some really, really great, smart people, and not just engineers. I know we're the greatest, but no, I get to work with, I get to see Nova Scotians all the time. Like I get to go out and see the public. Like when I was building hospitals, would go to a hospital, get to see the patients, meet the families. And then you know that the jobs that you're doing, like they're actually impacting people. Right now, I mean, you know, I do a lot of work on seniors buildings, and I get to see that. I get to see the seniors that were fixing their apartments and their buildings. And it's really nice to know that, that, you know, you're doing some good in the world. You know, helping others is a big part of it. And when I drive around the city, I drive around Nova Scotia, I can see projects that I've been working on. And I think it drives my son crazy because we'll go by something. I'm like, oh yeah, I did that over there. And it was funny. And my dad used to do that to me. My dad was a bricklayer. So every time we would go by a big building, my dad would point out the buildings that he was working on and made him very proud. And I'm sort of doing the same thing right now. So I get to see the stuff that I do. In my office, I kind of overlook the Halifax Harbor. So I get to see the comings and goings of the Canadian Atlantic Fleet. So I look at the ships and I'm wondering, boy, I wonder who the engineering officer of that ship is, sort of thing. All right. Pay. Well, you know, being an engineer, that's not my Learjet and that's not my race car. But as an engineer, you can have a very comfortable living. I'm not going to get into what they are. I've got some websites here. You can go and see how much money you can make as an engineer in the government and things like that. You can go research. It's all online. You can go look at it. But I like to say it's a very comfortable living, right? Work-life balance. Wow, that's another reason why I love my job. So in the military, it depends because sometimes you're gone away for a long time. I've been in Bosnia and Afghanistan. So when I'm gone for like 6-7 months and all that. But working for the Nova Scotia government is great. It's a great work-life balance. I do have a life outside of being an engineer. I'm an avid snowboarder. And I love riding motorcycles and dirt bikes. So that's me on my dirt bikes. So I get, when I take my vacation, I get to go away. Yeah, so it's pretty decent. Great life balance. However, this is my sort of warnings. This is my philosophy on life. The harder you work, the younger you are, the less hard you'll have to work for the rest of your life. So what does that mean? Work hard in school, right? I really, really wish I had paid attention in junior high and high school. Like I said, I did not finish with very high grades. As a result, I was very fortunate that that I was actually accepted to go to college. I actually applied to go to college to 4 colleges and I got denied every single one. And I finally found one place that would give me a chance and I went to college. So if I'd done better in school and got a little higher marks, I probably would have got into the other programs. I wanted to be a pilot. I didn't get into any of the programs because my marks weren't high enough. So I had a little bit of a fallback plan. So you work hard in school, you get decent grades. You don't have to get 95s and all that. You just good, solid grades, understand what's going on. And then you can, get a little bit more education. And, the more education you get, the better the job you can get. It's very simple. There's no easy way around it. My son wanted to be a basketball player for a while. He's 5'7", so you can kind of see where that career is going. So it's the mind is a very powerful tool. So the harder you work, the younger you are, the easier it will be for the rest of your life, if that makes sense. I have some other advice here. So does everyone know what they want to do? They're in grade 7. They already have their life planned out for them. If you don't worry about it. It's you'll figure it out in time. But don't take the easy way out, right? Work hard now, right? Challenge yourself. Like I said, it's easier to work hard now than try to do it in your life. Like being able to go to school or something right after while you're 18 years old is a lot easier to do when you're 30 years old and you got 2 kids. So when I went to university, and I was very lucky that I was accepted to go to the Royal Military College, I was 28 years old. And a lot of my classmates, so I wasn't wearing the red suit with the little hat on. I was a mature student. But a lot of the students that some of the other classmates like myself who were like in their late 20s and 30s, whatever, we had families. So we were going to school, going to university, and we had families. It was very difficult because you're trying to balance your family. So, it's easier to do it when you're younger. My biggest thing, as I keep telling young people, is when you're doing problems at school, don't just focus on trying to solve the problem. Try to understand how you're solving the problem, because that's really what your teachers are trying to teach you, is not to answer the question, but how to get to the answer. You have to do the work. You got to be responsible for yourself. There's no easy way to say this, but you got to put in the work and you have to be responsible for it. It's up to you to learn, right? Your teachers, your parents, and all your tutors and things like that, they're there to help you along the way. They'll show you the road, but you have to walk down that road. You have to put in the work. Is it hard? Absolutely. It is extremely hard. However, it's extremely rewarding. That's the nice thing, is that when you're done the end of it, you're kind of proud. Like I look back at my life and I'm like, I can't believe I made it here to what I'm doing, but it took a lot of hard work. And and what do I do now is I help others go down that hard path. And that's why I'm here to talk to you today about. That's all I really have to present. Let's find some cool photos here.
That's great, Dennis. I'm gonna cut in because we just have a minute
Yep.
or so left. So I'd like to see if there's any questions from the students through the teachers, or if Anna has any questions for you. I want to thank you. That's great advice, and your career and education journey is a great example. I love the theme that's come through this morning is that, you know, people do different things, and you can change your career, and you keep those options open, and you just keep working hard, and take every opportunity that presents itself. So we'll take it. It does take a minute for the questions to get to the chat, but I'm going to say, Anna, do you have any questions for Dennis?
Are we done at 10:30? Is that when my time is up?
About 10:25,
Oh,
about
okay.
now, but yeah, but we have a minute.
Okay, sure. I'll take any questions.
We don't have any questions in the chat yet, but I was just wondering, how has COVID affected what you do or the industry that you work in?
Well, COVID had a real impact because one is we weren't sure if we were able to work. I was working on hospital projects, so we could continue all of our hospital projects. They were deemed essential. But the big thing that we're seeing right now is because of the supply chain issues, right? We can't get stuff, material. That's what's really slowing us down right now. So all of these projects, and I try to keep telling that to the minister and the deputy ministers and all that, is that the reason why we're slow is that we can't get parts right now. But you know, we have to be patient. So we have to be, as an engineer, you have to figure out better ways to do it. So sometimes we change the material, we source out local material, things like that. But that's the biggest thing for us, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Dennis. We appreciate your time, and I know that you're volunteering in different schools and you do all kinds of mentoring. So thank you so much for sharing your story with the students and the teachers today, and all the best to you.
All right. And if anyone has any questions, please send them to me and I'll send you some answers. Have a great day, everyone. Best of luck. Take care now.
You too. Okay. You ready?
I think we're ready.
Okay. So introducing, this is AJ Bird, Principal of Indigenous ROC and Director of Nova Water of Canada. Nice to meet you, and thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
So AJ, I'll start. Oh, I'm going to butt right in. Sorry. AJ, can you just start a little bit, a brief overview of what it is that you do?
Well, right now, I'm made the transition from basically being in clean tech and now into ROC, which stands for Return on Carbon. And what Return on Carbon Labs, what we're doing is we're basically measuring data as it pertains to energy. And we first focus on people reducing energy usage. And by doing that with a blockchain-backed technology, we can actually start measuring carbon offsets. And there's carbon offsetting is basically very important to the transition to net zero that's happening worldwide, but especially more important, you know, for addressing climate change, just, you know, the impact of too much energy development in the past, in our past, and making that transition to a cleaner future. And so we're a tool that help people measure a reduction and capitalize on that reduction so that they can do further clean energy adaptations.
Well, that's super important, obviously, for our time right now. And there must be a lot coming at you, I guess, with the demand to do carbon reduction. And I know a lot of the students that I work with, we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, and everyone's talking about climate change and all of those things. And my question is, how did you get into this? How did you start?
Well, for myself, I'm not a very young person, so I'm soon to be 51. And what I did first was I was a police officer in Toronto. And then I had a really untraditional background. And then I went and I did the stay-at-home mom thing for a lot of years and made sure that my son got educated. And then turned around and got into clean tech by helping clean tech developers, because you still have to, you can be really good at science, or you can be really good at engineering, you could be really good at something. But to do that, you still have to have a business, you know, background, unless you're working for, you know, a research company or things like that. So I got into clean technology by assisting clean tech developers in going and launching their business, because that's ultimately what it is. It's a business that is in clean tech. And so my first background was actually in what we call biogas, and biogas is created when organics start to decompose in an area where there is no oxygen. And by doing that, you're creating methane and CO2, carbon dioxide. Methane, when it's captured, irrespective of where it comes from, but when it's captured and processed, it actually becomes, it's the same molecule as natural, it is natural gas. And natural gas throughout history, was organic, but then, when they started mining, it became a fossil fuel. And so that is very energy intensive. They used to use a lot of clean water. And there's, some concerns about instability of the Earth's crust in certain areas and potential for earthquakes. So that was my first background, biogas from landfills. And then I got into anaerobic digesters and wastewater, all the smelly stuff. And from there, also got into clean water technology and how we can reuse our water. And instead of spending millions of dollars doing it, do it in a sustainable fashion, potentially for reuse, but also very low energy requirements and an ability to harness those organics from the wastewater into energy. And then from there, I met Megan, and Megan is the CEO of Return on Carbon. And Megan and I met through one of her engineers. So this is this important thing of always being networking, and what you folks are doing now, 20 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 1 year from now, all of this group, they're always going to be connected, and you never know how those connections are going to lead to other things. So my background is not in STEM, but I look back and I really regret not having been encouraged to go into STEM. And in my days in school, I think I'm echoing, and I'm really sorry.
No, I think you're okay.
Okay, and in my days in school, and it's really sad to say, but girls were not encouraged to go into sciences. They were encouraged to go into teaching or the arts, or if they were to be in science, they were encouraged to become a nurse, not a doctor. So, this is so exhilarating for me to see is, first of all, younger people excited in STEM, but especially females also to be involved in STEM.
That's super. Anna, do you have a question for AJ?
Yeah, so I was obviously, like you said, your road to this is a little bit unconventional, but can you tell us what now, if you're going to go into this road, what education you would need?
Well, to get into clean technology, at the very level, basic is to have either, an undergrad, in the sciences, any field of the sciences, but then there's also, and it's very underrated, but even to start with community college for 2 years, if one must do that, or to literally to get a trade, is all trades are part of STEM projects, clean tech projects. So electricians, a very, very important thing, engineering, or even technicians. So to always kind of, I would look back and make sure that you have all your available options ahead of you academically. And there's nothing to stop you from taking online courses. There's a lot of online opportunities through, different online universities, like Athabasca University is an example. And to just leave your options open, but definitely having an undergrad or some sort of, diploma or certificate is really, really important.
Thank you. AJ, can you talk about who it is you're supporting? So who are your clients basically that you're supporting into this clean energy?
So with RO Carbon, we're looking at larger buildings right now, and larger buildings meaning like big apartment buildings, manufacturing facilities, and because a lot of the times they obviously use a lot of energy, and even the energy that's used. I use this issue, or this analogy, I should say, in my work, and I'll say you don't put a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. And what that means is there's all this push for clean technology and clean energy and reductions, and I think that's fabulous. But we must first be very conscious, going back to that word sustainable, but being very conscious and know what energy we're using right now. So that's what RO Carbon does, is we do an analysis. We put a sealed meter into a building's operations called the mains. We put a meter in there, and then that does, basically a meter data collection every 5 minutes. And so we can actually determine what time of the day, down to that 5 minutes, is there an energy surge or is there wasted energy? And I'm not sure who all has been in a great building called IKEA here in Dartmouth. And in Dartmouth, we actually have one of our systems in IKEA. So even a building that's been built to be very, they call it a LEED, but low efficiency energy design. By doing that, we actually even help them reduce their energy in a building that was built properly. But there's a saying, you don't know what you don't know. So we did not know they were wasting energy. And that's the first step. After we've done a calculation and we get everything operating as efficient as possible, then we can also add on renewable. We don't do the renewable installation ourselves, but we recommend, small scale wind, solar. We're looking at electric vehicle charging stations, but that are powered by solar and small scale wind, or a combination, or one or the other. And so we're starting there, but we're also going to be looking at things in the future like geothermal designs. I'm just trying to think of some of the other things that, we're like, at some point we might be looking at renewable natural gas, but right now we're focused on electricity. And yeah, that's where we're going, and that's what we're doing right now.
That's super. Thank you. Anna, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk about what you do in a typical work day or work week in your job.
Well, we have a team, so there's about 9 of us. I think there's 9 of us right now, and so we have one gentleman that we call him a virtual energy analyst. So what he does is, we'll use the IKEA example. Once a month, he goes in and he reads the data. And the data is, like I said, it's built on a blockchain. So this is a whole new area for me, but I think a lot of the younger crowd is very aware of blockchain. But blockchain, is information built on previous existing information in chunks. So it's visible, it's transparent. And from there, we go in and we see if, are there any energy surges, or is everything operating efficiently? Number one word being efficiently. And then from there, he would report back, hey, we noticed this going on. Sometimes what happens is somebody's come in and maybe they've changed some switches in the elevator, and not knowing by doing that, they've affected the efficiency of the building. They've done their job, but the building's data has shown that there's an inefficiency. So that's one thing that our company does. I mean, there's different people in our company. For me, I'm out there and I'm identifying people that have large buildings that, could benefit from a reduction in their energy, or again, back to assessing what they're doing right now. There's a lot of interest in going to efficient design, but there's more buildings out there that are inefficient than there's going to be designs that are efficient. So that's part of the background, is identifying what's out there in Nova Scotia. We have clients now coming to us from actually outside of Canada as well. Excuse me, I just have to plug in my laptop. Speaking of energy, that's one thing I just try to do. So then we also have other like Megan, the CEO. She's always out there. She's reading all the data that comes in, and also looking at basically trying to take this science and making it a business. So there's so much of, anything people can invent that help the world, you still need to have access to somebody that can help you get it out there, get it working with the government, get it researched, get it out in the marketplace so that you can help many, many more people.
That's really cool. It sounds like a real collaboration in your day-to-day work.
Absolutely. That's there's no I in team.
Yeah.
I know you've heard that one.
Yes.
That's great, AJ. So we know there's a lot of demand, and on, I guess, when we're in social media and things, it sounds so positive about, people want to move towards clean, and this is a movement that's happening, but I can only imagine how frustrating the challenges of getting there could be. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you face in your job?
Well, one thing that in any job, sometimes it's very easy to be very personally interested in something or passionate or think that you have the solution. Now, when you're working with a team, which most of us will in life, most of us will be working with, other people in some capacity, whether it's at school or it's out in the workplace. You're going to be working with people. So being able to communicate effectively is a really, really important tool for any job, any career, any education, and especially dealing with people that, want to make the change, but they don't understand how to do it. So being able to be somebody that interprets science for other people to understand, like, this is how you can, make a change for the better, or this is a problem. So sometimes, people make fun of, STEM type people for being geeky or nerdy. And I'm a proud geek. I'm a bookworm. I'm always learning, watching things. And I look now, having been a former police officer, I look at every problem like a mystery that I want to solve. So that's kind of how, you have to be prepared. I don't want to say to be stumped, but things don't come easy, but that's part of the fun in solving the problem, whether it's energy efficiency or, working with a team. You always have to, get out there every day and know that, you might hear no a lot. You might hear people that don't understand what you're saying. So if you think that you have an answer that's useful, then you have to work on making sure that others are aware of it. Maybe you need to do a better job of writing or speaking. But at the end of the day, it's about, making change is sometimes uncomfortable. And that's something that, is a problem. You have to be prepared to be uncomfortable, to hear people say no, or to hear people say, I don't agree, or to hear people say, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a wonderful point. And about embracing that discomfort is a huge part of being successful, I think,
yes.
in career for sure. And thank you. You're not the first mentor this morning that mentioned the importance of communication. So I'm sure that the students are hearing that one. I'm just going to wait to see what questions come through the chat from the teachers and students. And in the meantime, Anna, do you have another question for AJ?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about the pay scale for this job. Like, what would be the starting salary of somebody in this career?
Yeah, well, right now, anybody coming out of school, there's a lot of, first of all, there's a lot of great opportunities for, I don't want to call them subsidies, but certainly incentives. And the incentives would be things like, I'll give you an example. We've hired 2 students, just graduated with their Masters of Management, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. And we were able to get some great funding for their positions through Eco Canada. So the first thing I would say is, that we are very much, always looking for ways to make sure that people are paid well. But, quite frankly, when people first start into a career, you might be looking at, $36,000 to $40,000 as a junior employee. But that doesn't necessarily last very long because, basically a year's worth of experience, you just start getting bumped up. Now for, Megan as the CEO, there's a different pay scale. She does a lot of things, what you kind of call, like, she's the inventor of this and the designer. She's not making a steady paycheck, because what happens in business is a lot of times, you have to make money to get your money. And so she's doing something, basically called sweat equity. Mm-hmm. So when you're younger and getting experience, it's really good to work for somebody else. But if you have something, I'm not saying that, Facebook is everything. My son always teases me, Mom, Facebook's for older people. But, if you look at the story behind Mark Zuckerberg, or even back in the day when Bill Gates, Bill Gates left Harvard, I believe it was, to start up his company. So there's not always a rule, but, when you first start, the pay is not, hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that's for sure. But certainly, you know, there's a lot of security and a lot of demand. So I see that rising.
Thank you. We do have some questions in the chat now. So Rebecca's asking, what kind of schooling did you do?
What kind of schooling I did back, I have my grade 12, and then I went to university, and I have not yet finished my degree. I have one class left to finish my Bachelor of Arts. And my particular education was never in science. So I'm kind of what one would call, you know, self-taught, self-learning. And that is always an option for people. Maybe you go to school and, you know, you're involved in something, and that doesn't mean that you have to be in school to learn something. You can always learn. I've done a lot of education by working with engineers. I have to understand. I don't just say, oh, I'm not an engineer, I don't understand this. That's where I go, and I go on the internet, and I read a lot of government reports, government research, technology research. There's tons of science journals out there. And and it's a really important thing, when you don't understand something, you can learn. You can go on and Google it. You don't believe everything you read on Google. I'm not implying that. What I'm saying is you make sure you read it from credible sources. And everybody here is in school, and everybody knows what I mean by a credible source, because that's how you get good grades at school. So I'm very much self-taught. And I wouldn't recommend that, because I look back and I'm like, yeah, I really wish I would have done this back when I was younger and in high school. Look more towards STEM as a possibility. So yeah, but I am university educated, just not in sciences. And we are interested in schooling too. I think I've kind of answered that. Do you think?
Yeah.
And
I think that's also very similar to like our last mentor was talking about, how you need to be willing to learn something new every single day.
All the time. In fact, life is a constant state of learning if you choose to be. There's some people that just think, oh, I graduated, you know, I don't have to learn anymore. Like I said before, my late father was a RCMP officer, and I was always expected to be a police officer. So that was something that, you know, that I guess I kind of was conditioned to go into that. But, you know, he always said, you know, like he was always reading. Remember, you know, in my day growing up, we didn't have the internet, but things like National Geographic, I'm trying to think of the science magazine that we used to have around the house, or just being outside and learning hands-on is really important too. If you don't know how to use a tool, you Google it, you can watch a YouTube video and get out there and try doing it yourselves. Like, you kind of actually always have to be pushing that. And I'll just give a quick answer on what are my work hours like. I don't work 9 to 5, and I'm okay with that. But a lot of our younger employees, you know, they do work very good hours. As long as they get their jobs done, nobody's expecting them to sit at a desk and punch a clock. So very much in STEM, your hours are kind of as long as you get your job done. That's a very important thing.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, AJ, for being here. And I want to say thank you to both you and Megan at ROC Labs, because Megan wasn't able to be here today, and you generously stepped up to join us. So thank you so much for that. If we have more questions from students, I will forward them your way, and we would appreciate if you would take some time and thought to get those back to us.
It would be our pleasure. And, you know, if any of these young people are on LinkedIn, by all means, you know, LinkedIn is where we do a lot of our work professionally. So that's something, if you're not doing it now, and as soon as you start on it, you'll get connected with other people in STEM for sure.
Thank you so much, AJ.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.